the former 2016 Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein on all these fast-moving developments here. He's teased before, Jill. It's very good to have you back with us. Do you think
Great to see you.
Do you think he will run, and do you think he should run?
I think it's very likely that he will run. He seems to be pressured as part of this campaign to bring more centrist billionaires or multimillionaires into the race, as if this is what we need. I don't think this is what we need, but I think it speaks volumes about the intention of the DNC and the political establishment to try to maintain a stranglehold of the economic and political elite, which is exactly the opposite of what we need.
You know, I'm wondering, because I also separately heard that Hillary Clinton might be entertaining a run. She says, many people have been urging her to run. What do you think of that?
Yes, I mean, I think that's a sign of the times. Looks like Deval Patrick is getting back into the race as well. I think that sort of speaks volumes about what's wrong with this picture, that we have a political system. Money is more concentrated into fewer hands than ever. We saw Barack Obama just last week speaking to these super donors who contribute at least $200,000 apiece each year to political campaigns. And we heard Barack Obama at the same time criticizing the movement of ordinary people to have a government that's working for us, that addresses the critical needs for health care.
So you didn't
and
agree
housing,
with what he said.
I think
I apologize. I think what he was trying to get at is be careful this far lurch to the left. That's my interpretation. Because, big ideas are fine, but you could be alienating people along the way. And maybe that speaks of the Bloomberg move, the Deval Patrick move, potentially the Hillary Clinton move, that the people, the progressives who've been espousing this are alienating other party members. Do you agree with that?
Well, but remember, we have 100 million people who aren't voting, who didn't vote in 2016. We had the two most disliked and untrusted candidates in our history. A recent poll done by the Wall Street Journal, actually, just about 8 weeks ago, showed that 70% of Americans are not just fed up, they are fighting angry with both pieces of the political establishment, with both parties that have not been delivering. They've been delivering for investors and for Wall Street, but not for the everyday people who are really struggling right now.
What are you going to do?
I'm fighting to build an alternative party, which, I'm afraid we're seeing another run-up to what happened in 2016.
Well, you know what Hillary Clinton said about your alternative party, that you cost her the election. What do you say?
I think that's, she said more than that as well.
She did, indeed. I chose the nicer stuff.
Hillary Clinton. Yes, right. I think this is her effort to distract from her own responsibility and this strategy, the Pied Piper strategy that elevated, what she thought were the most fringe opponents, like Donald Trump, the rigging of the Democratic primary. Had we had Bernie Sanders, I think it would have been a very different election, and most polls, most head-to-head matches showed that he would have won. We've got 70% of Americans saying they don't buy this. We have the largest group of voters. It's 100 million voters, which is way more than the number who voted for either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. Most people are sitting this out. And who are these voters who are withholding their votes? They're disproportionately black, brown, millennial, and poor. We have a younger generation right now that sees no future ahead of them. They don't have jobs. They are locked in debt. We're seeing the aging out of the economic elite and a younger generation that's really been locked out. And they are coming into their political maturity and looking for a place to go. And I think that's why real alternatives like the Green Party, like Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard are being shut down. They're being marginalized. We're seeing a repeat of 2016. I don't think it's going well. And I think, this is why people out of desperation voted for a wild card like Donald Trump, the biggest bully and con man, that's been in the office, certainly in our lifetimes. And if people don't get that agenda that delivers health care and affordable housing, gets students out of debt, makes higher education
well, if that was such an overwhelming popular edict, Jill, if that was such an overwhelming popular edict, then Donald Trump would be running scared right now. We're running way behind in the polls. In a lot of these battleground states, he's doing better than any of the prominent names. Why do you think that is. A lot of the people at the White House say we've got record low unemployment among all these groups that you just mentioned.
Yes, I mean, I think people don't trust either political party, and that's, you know,
well,
that's what
you
we
might
saw
be
in
right,
that Wall
but they
Street
seem to
Journal
trust
poll,
him more.
Which
They
is
seem
why,
to trust him more. Do you agree with that?
Yes and no. I mean, I think the largest bloc doesn't trust either, and they are not voting. I think this is why we need a more open debate. This is why I think it's so hopeful that we're now seeing ranked choice voting come into its own. The state of Maine adopted it. New York City just adopted it. Massachusetts has it on the ballot. That's a voting system that actually releases voters to vote for what they want, not just vote out of fear, not to vote in this climate of blaming and shaming independent voters and independent candidates outside of the political establishment. In the debates in 2016, remember, 75% of voters were saying they wanted to hear from the other candidates who were on the ballot in enough states that they could win. We're not talking about 20 or 100 more candidates. We're talking usually about 2 additional candidates that represent a different point of view.
Democrats are pounding the impeachment thing right now. Do you agree with that?
Yes and no. I fear it's going nowhere because of the the extremely partisan nature of the impeachment and the fact that the Senate is not going to they're not going to convict. They're not going to remove from office.
That if they had something strong on the president and whether it was the whole quid pro quo thing, do you think that process is fair? Some have said that Democrats have so over-obsessed with going after the president, some call it derangement syndrome, I don't know how you feel, that they're actually grabbing defeat from what would otherwise be the jaws of victory. Do you agree with that?
I think it's a mistake for them to have hinged impeachment around the issue of, the abuse of power by the president in Ukraine for the benefit, of a investigation of Biden and Burisma and so on. It's extremely kind of nitpicky. It's really in the weeds. It doesn't really mean a lot to most Americans.
So you're thinking they're wasting?
Do
you think they're wasting their time? Because you're right to the point that they're not getting much else done. I mean, a couple of trade deals are going to be pushed to next year, maybe later.
Exactly.
The government could shut down again, maybe later. So do you think this is going to boomerang on them?
I think this is emblematic of a political establishment that is not serving everyday people and that is really quite ground down now in these partisan battles that really aren't serving us. I think, we need real health care. I think we need Medicare for all. I think we need jobs.
But how do we
need to take back
Medicare
some of the
for
money.
all? Would a Jill Stein support a wealth tax? Because you need to tax a lot of people to pay for all of that.
Well, actually, remember that 1/3 of the expenditures in our current wasteful, hyper-bureaucratic healthcare system right now, 1/3 of every dollar you spend, every dollar that government spends, is paying for paper-pushing bureaucracy and red tape.
So do you support the government having still more? Jill, do you support the government having even more power to do that and extract concessions and cost savings when it has a sorry record of doing it?
That's right. I think it's not been serving everyday people. We know very well
who
our government is accountable to.
Why make it Medicare for all? That's more of a bad thing then, right?
Well, actually, what it does, Medicare is pretty good before they started punching all kinds of holes in it. So I think we need to improve on Medicare, which we know has a tiny overhead, compared to 1/3 of every healthcare dollar going into administration.
You think you're going to be able to sell that to young people and say Medicare for everybody, junk your private plan because the vast majority of them aren't really worth the paper they're printed on anyway? Well, there are 150 million people who have that. They don't all love it. To your point, they don't all love it. They don't all love it, but my God, you would junk that for everybody?
Well, what they hate is the health insurance policies that are trying to squeeze them for profit. That's what people hate.
And they'll love Medicare more, Jill? You think they'll love Medicare more?
We want an improved Medicare for all that actually serves people, not the pharmaceutical companies and not the health insurance companies. Polls are very clear that when people understand what they're getting, they want the right to health care as a human right. They want universal coverage, and they want health care. People love their doctors as a rule. Not all of them, but most of them. People are very grateful for their health care.
Distinction
they
there,
don't
Jill.
like the way
Jill,
they're being jerked around.
Distinction. I mean, health care for all is very different than Medicare for all. scale, making sure that there are allowances and protections for people if they get sick, that they will not go broke. There's an argument to be made for that. But the Medicare for all thing and trusting the government to lead it and do it, when you just talked about the administrative waste and abuse and paperwork pushes and the rest, this could be like motor vehicles on steroids, right?
Well, actually, it's well tested. You know, we know that in Canada, it's a tiny fraction. Actually, throughout all developed countries, in fact, people have a right to health care. I mean, people love the NHS, for example. They do, but they also, unfortunately, with that right, have to wait for treatment. Look at the
they
UK.
Have to wait for certain treatments there that otherwise, you're right, are covered. You just have to stand in line.
Yeah. Well, if you ask people, they are very grateful to have their health care, and they can't imagine living under our system. And as a medical doctor, I know very well, you know, from the, from speaking with patients and from people who have to deal with this healthcare system, it's outrageous. People are furious at the way they get jerked around by the profit-seeking private health insurance companies.
All right, so let me ask you about you. Back to you, Jill. I mean, if you do, you know, you're very serious about this. You're very eloquent, very strong-willed candidate, whatever Hillary Clinton says. But I want to ask you, the argument about you running last time was that she would just siphon votes away from the Democrats and hand the office to the Republicans, you say?
Oh, that's an effort to try to blame and shame independent voters who are tired of being thrown under the bus. 10 million Democrats who voted for Obama crossed over to vote for Donald Trump, you know, compared to 1.4 million who voted Green. You know, if you're looking at where the voters are, look at 100 million who refused to vote for either candidate of the major candidates being rammed down our throats.
So when you hear Hillary Clinton say that you tipped it in close states, you know, where the electoral votes really counted, and handed the election to him. I know she has said that a number of times. I've never had a chance to bounce that off of you. How do you feel about that? That you opened the doors of the White House to Donald Trump?
Well, that's actually not true, and that flies in the face of what we know are the facts. The facts show that about 2/3 of people who voted for me would just not have come out to vote. We know that Green voters largely won't vote for Democrats. So it's incredibly arrogant and presumptuous. It speaks volumes about the mindset of Hillary Clinton and the Democrats for them to assume that those votes belong to them. Those votes would not have gone to them, and you can run the numbers according to exit polls, which tell us exactly where those votes would have gone. And, you know, if you want to get into the weeds, it's about 10% of my votes.
But, you know, Jill, you didn't do too shabby. You didn't do too shabby. You got about 1.5 million votes, more than the last 3 Green tickets combined. Now, you can't tell me that out of that roughly 1.5 million in the battleground states that Donald Trump ended up winning by a combined, 70,000 votes, that the Hillary Clinton argument, I'm not saying that, you know, Donald Trump wouldn't become president regardless, that some of those 1.5 million votes were peeled off in those battleground states that tipped it to him.
So if you actually do the numbers on the vote difference in those states and the fact that only 11% would have been a net benefit for Hillary, it doesn't make the cut. I can send you those numbers if you'd like. We could put them up on your show, but the numbers don't make it. But to my mind, it's not about the numbers. It's about our right to vote for the candidate that really reflects what we want. We have to vote for what we want, not against what we're afraid of. Check out ranked choice voting. Check out Lisa Savage, who's running for Senate in Maine in a ranked choice race.
There are a lot of things going on. But you didn't do that shabby last go-around. I mean, that's an impressive vote total. So we'll look at it, see what you do next go-around. If there is a next go-around, I guess there is a next go-around, right?
You know, not for me this time. There will be other Green candidates running, but you know, the fight goes on, and you know, and we need to stand up for the government we deserve.
Jill Stein, thank you very much. Good catching up with you, Jill Stein.